Hi, so my name's James. I'm the Chief Nursing and Information Officer at Imperial College, and I'm going to talk a bit about using technology to support practice, and more accurately, optimising your digital record. We are a 100% electronic record trust, although for a 100% electronic record we have a large amount of paperwork still sitting around our organisation. Everyone always puts up where they work, so that's where I work, 5 sites across West London, and I am in a team of 1, so reasonably busy. So we've rolled out over the course of the last sort of 5-6 years to where we are at the moment, which is embedding and getting people to use the electronic patient record in a way that we would like them to use it. So I'm going to touch on 4 key parts, which are the bits that actually, when we're looking back, we want out of the record and what we want to happen. So the first one is to reduce variation. So at the moment, if you look across any organisation, there is variation in ward areas, there's variation in clinical practice. So it touches on roughly what Sarah was saying, remote monitoring of patients to allow uniform response, but not just on the sepsis, but also on things like patients who have pressure ulcers, whether they get turned regularly. How do we actually know what the impact of going 2 nurses short or 4 nurses short on any particular ward is on any day? Well, we should know that means that those patients won't get turned, and therefore this is the impact at the other end. So we need to nudge our nurse practice in the right direction. I say nudge because inevitably the nurses that I've got are really clever, and if I've designed a poor system, they find a way around it. So they take the system that I've beautifully designed, or I didn't design it, but someone else did, and they realise actually it wasn't quite as beautifully designed as I thought it was, and therefore they are doing something completely different. So the information I get out the other end doesn't look quite what I wanted, because actually when I go to the ward, they're still using a Word document to track their patients, because actually that is quicker. So if there is a workaround which is quicker, they will do it. We've touched on understanding the nursing demand, and it's actually in hours and out of hours. Certainly my site team come on at 8 o'clock at night and move nurses left and right around the hospital. I'd love to say that was based on a scientific approach of the nursing demand. It's basically which ward shouts loudest, as I need more nurses than they do. And it shouldn't be. It should be slightly more scientific, and we should be able to go, actually, the next 12 hours of nursing on that ward is this, and therefore actually the nurses stay still. Patient education is important. I understand there is those modules in Cerner, but actually how we link that in and how we evidence that our patients have got that education is certainly something we've yet to master. Linking all them systems into a single portal. We, like many organisations, have a large number of legacy systems as we've sort of grown our IT infrastructure. And inevitably they are all on separate systems, and they all have their own dashboard, and they all have their own login. And then inevitably by doing that, your nurse has about 20 logins to go into different parts of the system. It's being cut down very slowly, so we no longer have a separate PACS login or anything like that. That's all linked in. But actually there's a lot which still, if you want to go and see the temperature of your fridge, you go in and log in on a different system to see the temperature on that fridge. So there's a lot of work to be done there. But we have released time to care, and I realise I'm in an electronic conference, and I'm going to say less time in the clinical record, but actually less time in the clinical record is important. The clinical record should exist around you as you look after your patient, not be the primary source of what you do over that 12 hours. You should nurse your patient or look after your patient, but by doing so, the clinical record forms around you. So we've rolled out observations or bedside device monitoring integration, and that has released approximately 20,000 hours of nursing care back onto the ward. And that sounds like a lot, and you're then going to think, oh, I can strip all the nurses out. But it's not 20,000 hours in one lump. It's clearly 1 to 2 minutes per nurse per day, but then when you aggregate that up over a ward over the year, and then on an organisational level, you get 20,000 hours. PPI is coming. It's got some challenges, but that's positive patient identification. When you scan the patient, you scan the medication, and it says, yes, that's right, that's the one you're supposed to give the patient. And part of the releasing time to care looks also at CNS referrals and things like safeguarding. At the moment, to do our safeguarding work, you do your referral on a Word document, you attach it to the clinical record, you go into your email, you open your email, you find which borough the patient lives in, you then email it to that borough of social services, you then obviously go off shift. They email you back, but you're on annual leave for 2 weeks. So there's no continuous way of doing that in the clinical record at the moment. It's all about inbound and outbounding messaging to whatever EPR you're using, so that actually from a digital perspective, on your phone, you would naturally just type something and it goes in the right place. You should do that in the EPR. You should just type your referral into the EPR onto the form, hit send, and it goes to social services. You shouldn't then have an extra 6 steps involving your own personal email to get it there. Data coming out is actually really important, and we actually probably haven't focused on that as much as we need to at the nursing level. If we want to drive practice, if we want to drive a change, when I was in ED as the lead nurse, we managed to get people completing observations. But we only managed to achieve that by handing the nurses, every month, we'd print off 350 obs, or 350 patients, who scored a new score over 7. Each nurse then got given 5 of them, and they each had to look at whether they were appropriately scored, whether they got appropriately escalated. So all of a sudden, every Band 5 knew that every month, their peers were auditing their documentation. That did wonders for improving documentation, because all of a sudden they knew they were being audited by their peers. All of a sudden they started completing the record. But it's getting that information out in a meaningful way that actually assures the entire hierarchy from ward to ward that actually you're providing that good care. So we're starting to look now at a standard nursing language, and be that whatever type of language you go down, obviously linked to a SNOMED code, but it's about the ability to evidence the impact of your nursing on that ward. So actually I can tell you that our nurses did X, Y, and Z, and that's the impact it's had over the last day, week, month, year. So that's brought quickly the sort of journey we've been on at Imperial and how we are going to go for the next year and optimize. But a lot of it is fixing the basics. We can pile as much new stuff on as we want, but at the moment, the basics aren't being done right. So piling new stuff on top is not going to make any difference. Cool, thank you.